What is happening, everybody? Welcome to episode 25 of season 2 of the Yellow Card podcast, proudly presented to you in partnership by Student Union Sports. Make sure to check out studentunionsports.com. Check out all of their content weekly, whether it's basketball, soccer, football, baseball, hockey, whatever it might be. They got all the content for you. I don't even want to talk basketball. I'm in Boston right now, and by far this is the most saddened I've seen Boston be in a very, very, very long time. So I don't even want to talk about basketball right now, but we don't have to because this is a strictly soccer podcast. So we're going to switch gears over to soccer, where we just witnessed one of the most exciting final weeks of Premier League football. So let's dive right into it. Jones, you had some wonderful scorelines that hit right on the money. You call for the Crystal Palace versus Nottingham Forest tied at 1-1. You call for the Brentford upset at the end of the year for Manchester City. So Brentford winning 1-0. Unfortunately, though, we both wanted Liverpool to win against Southampton, and they couldn't capitalize that. That was by far the most exciting match of the whole entire week, the whole entire slate, where 8 goals were scored, 4-4. What an absolutely unbelievable ending that was to this year's Premier League season. Let's talk about winners and losers of the Premier League season. Let's do a quick overview, and then let's continue to dive into more content because we got a lot more happening this week. So, Jones, get us started.
Yeah, no, let's get it started here. I mean, let's just kind of recap. I mean, the Premier League season as a whole. Why don't we talk about the 3 teams that got relegated? Southampton, Leeds, and Leicester. What are your thoughts on these 3 teams that have been officially relegated?
Yeah, I mean, for Leicester, I feel really bad. They managed to get things done at the end of the season by beating West Ham United. Unfortunately, I feel horrible, absolutely horrible for Dean Smith. He only came in with 8 matches left to go in the whole entire season. And to have to relegate with his team and now have his future in limbo, it's just brutal. For Leeds United, I don't feel bad at all. We both called it that sacking Marcelo Bielsa at the beginning of the season was probably going to be their nightmare and demise. That's exactly what happened. And for Southampton, I mean, again, another sacking that shouldn't have happened. It's having sacked Ralph Hasenhüttl. Yes, we saw it coming. Yes, we knew that it was going to happen, but the replacement just wasn't there. No good replacements at all. Nothing well done there. Unfortunately, those were the 3 teams that just really didn't really take care of their season this year. And unfortunately, that's why they are where they are. Feel bad for them. A lot of history between those 3 clubs. The one that I feel the worst about is definitely Leeds United. They seem to be back in the pace of being that historic team that they've been in the Premier League, just to literally gag it all up half point through the season and not be able to address the problem correctly. So
I think for these 3 clubs, a lot of changes are coming. I think for Southampton, for example, you need to start and look at potentially, I shouldn't say hitting the reset button, but you should be looking to move some of your bigger pieces to get a little bit of extra money. So like a James Ward-Prowse, Kyle Walker-Peters, like those 2 names right there for Southampton. I think they need to address whether or not they want to keep them long-term, because right now their value is still very much up. And I think I would rather take advantage of that value now than wait for them to play really well in the EFL this upcoming season. So if I'm Southampton, I'm making potentially one or both of those moves right off the bat there. For Leicester, listen, Yuri Tillemans is gone, James Maddison's gone, let Jamie Vardy walk. The real reason why Leicester City is where they are today is because they still haven't found an answer for someone to replace Kasper Schmeichel. Their goaltending has been suspect all season long, and that is specifically the reason why they are in this position today.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Let's go over to top 5 of the table. We know who relegated. We know now what it looks like. We know who's getting. Actually, before we go to top 5, let's talk about the promoting teams. We know that for next season, we're going to have
Vincent Kompany's Burnley.
Yep, Burnley. We're going to have
Sheffield United.
and then we have
Luton Town.
Luton Town. Yeah, correct. So those three teams, do we foresee any future for them in the Premier League? Do we think that one of them might not be prepared enough to take on the Premier League next year? What are we thinking?
I think Burnley's going to stay up. Vincent Kompany and that team, it's just they're going to continue to be a pest that they are.
Mm-hmm.
The season before they relegated was an outlier. Yeah, they don't have Nick Pope, but the team that Kompany has put together is ready for the Premier League next year. I think they're going to be a middle of the table team next year. I don't see them relegating. Sheffield United, I think they're a piece or two away from being able to contend to stay in the Prem next year. I think they need to get McBurney some help and then also address goaltending, because I don't think their goaltending is going to be very much effective in the English Premier League next year. And Luton Town, I'm a little bit excited for. Different team to see up. They have to build a brand new stadium because of the capacity that they have. So it'll be interesting to see how they are. Honestly, like I could see them being like the underdog story that Brentford was 2 seasons ago. Like they could easily stay up, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're like a 1-year wonder up here.
I would agree. I think for Luton Town, I personally do not see a future for them. I'm concerned about their financials. I'm concerned about, again, capacity in their stadium and all that stuff. I think, while it's great that they got promoted to the Premier League, I just think might have been too ahead of their time. Could have stayed maybe another 2 more years down in the Championship just before they come up to the Premier League. That way they're ready, set, good to go. They have financials. They can make up the moves that they need to make. They can sign the players that they need to make. They can sell the players that they need to sell and be able to capitalize. Right now, I just don't think they're structurally ready. And I think that's going to be their demise. For Burnley, I agree with you. They have to keep Vincent Kompany on the, behind the wheel. He's going to be the one driving that bus. He knows how the Premier League competes. If there's somebody that you should be fully trusting on, it's him. That's if they do anything different, then bye Burnley. For Sheffield, we know exactly who they are. We've seen them compete in the Premier League. We know that they can be a pest. They need to bring the physicality here in the Premier League in order to stay up. Otherwise, sorry, my guys, but like you're not surviving the Premier League.
What?
Now that we, yep.
Sorry, go ahead. No, sorry, go ahead.
Now that we've touched base on relegation zone, promoting zone, let's talk about the top 5, because for top 5, we really didn't expect many of the changes that transpired for top 5. We saw potentially, clubs like Tottenham, Liverpool, even Chelsea to be part of the top 5. And while Liverpool secure at least a spot in European competition, teams like Tottenham and Chelsea completely fumbled the bag. Chelsea at one point was very much in the danger of relegating. They managed to stay up at number 12 with 44 points, 11-11-16 record, by far their worst record in the past 20 years. Tottenham did a little bit better. However, that whole situation of letting go of Antonio Conte just kind of blasting the whole entire team into the sun, kind of left them to be completely out of that top 5. They went 18-6-14 with 60 points. They finished 8th, right behind Aston Villa by 1 point. Aston Villa finished in 18-7-13. But then Liverpool, the one team that we saw struggle heavily at the beginning of the season, managed to be able to turn the things around towards the tail end of the middle of the season, and then brought it towards the end of the season. And probably one of the better teams towards the end of the season. Finishing 19-10-9, 67 points, finishing 5th, securing a spot for the first time competing in the Europa League after I don't even know how many years.
It's been a while.
I think it was like 2002. I want to say
something like that. It's been a very long time for them.
Actually, no, 2015, 2016, Liverpool was in the Europa League. I
Oh,
believe, if anything, they actually went to the Europa League final. Yep, they went to the Europa League final, where they lost against Sevilla 3-1 at St. Jacobs Park in Basel. Yeah, it's been some time. It's been some time for Liverpool since they're competing in the Europa League. Liverpool might be the most stacked team in the Europa League next year. Perfect good chance to have some silverware around their trophy case for next year.
yeah. Listen. It's disappointing to say the least. Because we expect so much more. I mean, both you and I had Liverpool as our winners at the beginning of the season,
Yeah,
and injuries piled up quick. They just couldn't get going out of the gate, and once they started to struggle, it just boom. They were as low as like 8 or 9 at one point.
yeah. And to be
So
quite
the
frankly
fact that
honest with you, disciplinary wise, I mean, people like Virgil van Dijk were just not there.
yeah, and I mean, listen, they finished with a plus 28 goal differential, which I think was third best in the league, which is still crazy to think about. But they left third or fourth, excuse me. But they left so many points on the board in some of those key games, and that's in the end what realistically killed them. 4 points out of getting to fourth place over Newcastle. Newcastle had a ton of draws. We had 9 losses. They had 5. That's just the difference maker right there. But they're going to be back next year. I'm not necessarily worried. I think everybody's healthy. I think they're going to add some pieces. Not afraid to spend. Cody Gapco got a full year. He's ready to go. Darren Newell, he should be ready to go next year. They lose Bobby, yeah, but I think Liverpool can bounce back and easily get back into the top 4 next year and be a title contender.
Yeah, so let's talk about the top 4 this year, which were Manchester City, Arsenal, Manchester United, and Newcastle. I'll get us started for Newcastle. Completely uncharted waters in quite some time for Newcastle, finishing with one of the best records in the Premier League, 19, 14, and 5, with an appointment that everybody questioned. Nobody thought for sure that Eddie Howe would be able to manage this whole entire campaign, get Newcastle somewhere in the relevancy of the Premier League. But boy, did that man completely and absolutely just blasted all of those comments and all of that criteria and all those critiques to the absolute outer layer of the sun, because for that whole entire team, everything went right. Signings, right amount of money, right investment, right ownership, right management, right discipline levels, right stamina levels. Everything went right. There was not a lot of things that went wrong. I mean, for Newcastle to lose only 5 matches throughout a whole entire season, that's been uncharted waters, I think probably since early 2000s, maybe even 1900, like early 90s.
For sure.
Then you look at Manchester United. Manchester United, not a lot of people had hope for Erik ten Hag. They knew that he would be a good appointment. They knew that he would be the right coaching required for this team. They knew that disciplinary-wise, he could get this team in the right mindset. But nobody expected them, except probably for me, because I was delusional and thought that they could win this year's Premier League. Nobody really thought that they would be in that spot. They probably thought they would qualify again for Europa League, but not for Champions League football. And as a Manchester United faithful, I gotta say, this is probably one of the best records we finished with in the past few years, 23, 6, and 9. I know Ole Gunnar Solskjaer managed to finish with us second, as well as did Jose Mourinho after winning the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. Mm-hmm. But for a team that has had to deal with a lot of turnaround and not a lot of return and investment, this is pretty good. It's starting to feel again like maybe there is a glimmer of Manchester United being back.
Well, I think just to counter, I think at the beginning of the year, you and I both saw them as a Champions League club team. I think, just based off of how they looked out the gate with Ten Hag, there was a couple question marks, but I think as the year progressed, we saw nothing but improvement from them. I don't think that, at least for us here on the podcast, both of us thought they were still championship league caliber team from the start of the season. So credit to us for that aspect. I think United has questions, just like almost every team does. But I think United's questions are a little bit more significant than everybody else's, because if United can get the pieces that they need in order to be Ten Hag successful, they could literally be an odds-on favorite to win the league next year.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree. I think that right now the most important and the most crucial thing that Manchester United needs to pin down before the beginning of next season is ownership.
Yes, that, and then 2 players that you need to, one you need to move on from, and the other one you need to decide whether or not you want to move on from.
Yeah, I think it's actually more like 5 players, but we
So
could go on and on and on.
thinking of the keys. I'm just thinking of keys here. Obviously, we could dive into depth about it. I think the key, you already know the first one. You've been trying to push him out the door for the past 3 seasons. Is Harry Maguire.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to go 100%. If United wants to be successful, he needs to be off the team. And then the second thing, you need to figure out what you're doing with David De Gea. If you're keeping David De Gea, cool, run it back. Again, if you don't want David De Gea, then you need to get him to sell so you can get another goaltender to come back in here.
I think if you're Manchester United, while statistically David De Gea did have a great season overall, you need to look forward towards the prosperity and future of the club. I don't believe that David De Gea has what it takes to give a future look to Manchester United for the next 3 to 4 years, which is probably the lifespan that you need in order for Manchester United to be back to winning the Prem, winning the Champions League, dominating Europe. So do you need to sign a new goalkeeper? Yes, 100%. You need to sign somebody who is a starter, who is not afraid to get their hands dirty. You do not need to sign somebody like Dean Heaton or whatever else bullshit signings we decide to come up with, like Jack Butland. Like, that was a stupid signing, stupid waste of money that we never even utilized. So David De Gea, agree with. Harry Maguire has got to go. Anthony Martial has got to go. You need to decide what to do for center defensive mids. Do you sell Scotty McTominay to Newcastle, create some funding so you can sign a new piece, potentially Declan Rice or James Maddison? You know, you also need to move on and decide what to do about Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Do you keep him? Do you sell him? Do you create funds? Personally, I think we should keep him. I think he's by far one of the best right wingers there is in the Premier League right now, that has very good contentive performances and that can challenge. But some others don't agree with that. And I think last and not least, you need to figure out the whole Jadon Sancho contract. That is a contract that's tying up a lot of money with very little results. Don't know what you would do there. For me personally, replace him, let him go. Don't think he's the signing that we all thought he would be for Manchester United. But who knows? Maybe next season might be his revival. Who knows? But I agree. I think before we even talk signings, the financial part of this club needs to be figured out. Ownership needs to be figured out. So again, great season for Manchester United. Congratulations, 3rd place. Not a lot of people really expected them to be top 3 in the Premier League. Maybe a few did, but not a lot of people did. So congratulations to Manchester United again. Arsenal, what an absolutely beautiful story they told. Unfortunately, they did. Coffee's for closers.
It would have been
drink the coffee.
It would have been a beautiful story if they finished it, but they didn't, unfortunately.
Coffee's for closers. They couldn't finish their closing story. So maybe next season could be part 2 of that story. Maybe part 3. Who knows? Manchester City, however, holy crap, what a smack in the delay on the whole entire Premier League. Everybody thought for sure that they were not going to win this year's Premier League title. Everybody thought it was between Manchester United and Arsenal. For a very long period of the Premier League, it was between Manchester United and Arsenal. There was only a 6-point difference between the two clubs. Manchester City, out of the gutter and out of the blue, managed to turn it around and deliver an absolutely beautiful record with 28-5-5, proving once again that for this era, the coaching era of the Premier League, Pep Guardiola is the absolute greatest in the past decade.
No, seriously, it's
It's just there was nothing left to say about that. You can question it all you want. You can say that Mancini did a great job with Manchester City, and that's why they're relatable. No, yes, did he do a great job when the season that they beat QPR? Absolutely, but from there on, Guardiola has given Manchester City the relevancy that they desperately needed.
Well, this is the biggest thing. And yes, we can talk about their success and how they have progressed as the best dynasty in the Premier League in the past 50 years. However, one of the big things that they've struggled with is winning out of Premier League competitions.
Mhm.
Champions League coming up, and they have the FA Cup. Both of those are there's potential they could win both. There's also potential that they could lose both. So it's going to be a hit or miss either way. So I we're going to dive in the FA Cup in a couple minutes, but
Yeah, we
I
need to.
think
Yep.
one thing that I wanted to give you a shout out on just before we dive into that is looking back at the predictions we had at the beginning of the season, there are some we got really, really wrong. There's some we got, we're really, really close. But there was one person that got one team exactly right in the table, and that was Diego. Diego, what team do you think, just out loud, what team do you think you got exactly right?
Let me take a look real quick. Let me snoop around
Snoop around the thing. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4 teams that I was one spot off of. Diego had one that he was one spot off of. 2, actually, excuse me. But he had the one that was right on the nose, and I think that's where he gets a little bit more credit than I do in that. So what was the one team you got exactly right?
I don't know, to be honest with you. Maybe Aston Villa.
Incorrect. You had Aston Villa actually. Where did you have them? You had them finishing 12th at the beginning of the year.
Maybe Wolves.
Nope. Wolves you had in the top 10 for whatever reason.
I don't know. Then maybe Everton. Other than that, I don't know.
Nope. It is, in fact, the team that at one point you and I was like, there's no way that they're going to be good again. And they're good. Crystal Palace. You had
Oh, I got
predicted
them at
Crystal
11th.
Palace at 11th.
Wow.
I had them at 10th. You had them at 11th.
Wow.
So big shout out to you. Give
Well,
you the
thank
respect
you.
you deserve there.
And literally, that was by 1 point. Because Chelsea was right behind them.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So
crazy.
thank God to Chelsea. All right, let's dive into the FA Cup. Manchester Derby FA Cup. United, City, both already have a trophy this year. Who gets the second one?
Well, we gotta give the value of history here. It is the first time in FA Cup history where the title is gonna stay in one city and one city only. It's a derby. It's Manchester City versus Manchester United. Personally, for me, I think that the priority for Manchester City, and after seeing how tired those legs are against a team like Brentford, personally, I am gonna be biased, and I think that the title goes to Manchester United. I don't know what just happened here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Personally, I think that the title goes to Manchester United this year, simply and only because that is the only massive title that Manchester United has to compete for right now. And so therefore, I think there's more desire and hungerness out of Manchester United that there is out of Manchester City. Now, for City, on the other hand, you never know. Poke the wolf, and that wolf is coming to hunt at you. And I think that's where Manchester United has a big problem. They're big pokers, but they can't seem to finish and capitalize. So, personally, for me, I think this is a final that goes all the way to penalties. Penalties will be the deciding factor, and this I think where Manchester United can get things done.
Listen, I think if I'm Manchester City, right, and I'm sitting here, and I'm looking at these two potential trophies that I can win, the Champions League is the one that means more.
Of course.
It's the one trophy that Pep hasn't got for City in his tenure at Etihad. So I think I don't even think it goes to penalties. I think United's just going to come out and they're going to attack the tired legs early. They're going to jump out to a lead, and I think United's going to win 2-1. Final score: Marcus Rashford scoring the game winner in like the 85th minute. But I like Manchester United to get their second piece of hardwood of the season and to carry on a little bit more momentum for them going into the 23-24 campaign.
Yeah, I would agree. I would 100% agree with that. Let's go on to the Europa League final, because this is an exciting final. We have a team that's coming back to defend their title. And then we have another team that some predicted and some didn't. So we'll start with you on your takes on the Europa League final.
Yeah, listen, this to me, man, I mean, we're sitting here, we're thinking about what needs to get done here. All right. And I just think back to 2013, a couple months after Chelsea beat Benfica in the Europa League final. Jose Mourinho said, I didn't want to win the Europa League. It was a big disappointment for me. I don't want my players to feel the Europa League is our competition. So for that, it makes it hard for me to believe that Roma is going to be at their tip-top game because of how Mourinho views the Europa League. But for Roma, it means more for them if they win this because it gives them confidence going into next year, whether or not Mourinho is there or not. So I just, like you said, Sevilla is just a different animal. They've literally won 6 of these Europa League trophies since 2006, which is something we have to put into consideration there. Their quest for 7. I'm going to go with Sevilla in a close one. I just see them getting up for this game quicker than Roma does. And I think with Sevilla getting up quicker, I think it hurts Roma the longer the game goes.
I would say definitely. I think for Jose Mourinho, these past 2 seasons at Roma have been a humbling effect for him and have rekindled him back to the Jose Mourinho that everybody fell in love with when he was coaching Porto. Yes, he is the special one. He is a master of football. He knows what he's doing. He's a phenomenal coach, highly respected, highly regarded, and all that stuff. The only thing that I can think of for Roma that could absolutely go wrong is their discipline. If they don't play in a mature manner against Sevilla and just fall into the whole physical aspect thing of the game that Manchester United failed, and that's where they fell against Sevilla, then yeah, the title's out the door for Roma. But I think for Roma this year, and I think for history purposes, Mourinho would be the only coach in the world to have ever won all European trophies. So I think for that aspect, this brings a little bit more oomph to the whole final, right? And for a lot of those players, this is a massive European final. Not a lot of them are going to get another chance to play another European final. So I think this is a complete different aspect than what we saw in Chelsea. Chelsea, in 13th had a roster that should have absolutely dominated the Premier League, and they choked it.
Yeah.
It wasn't the coaching, it wasn't the ownership, it was the players themselves, and they didn't own up to it. It was actually Mourinho who ended up owning up to it. In this year's Europa League final, 10 years later, this is a roster that Jose Mourinho only had $2 million to work with. And he's managed to make it a beauty and make it something worth talking about. So I think this title in itself means a lot more to Mourinho than what it meant 10 years ago.
Okay. You're kind of convincing me now a little bit. I won't lie. So take that with a grain of salt. So, yeah, I mean, listen, we'll have to wait and see, I guess, what transpires there. But there was one thing, it has to do with...
Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. One thing that we also need to focus on as well is that for the past 5 years in a row, the consensus has been that the most competitive leagues around Europe have been the Spanish League and the Premier League. This year, that narrative completely changed. And by
Right.
the way, we need to give it to Italian football as well. And this is
Correct.
why we see Roma in the final. This is why we see Inter in the final. This is why we saw a history-making campaign by Napoli happen this year. So a lot is on the rise for the Italians.
This is why this was going to get into my final point of the show tonight. So I saw a thing today, right? So over the last since let's see. So thinking about this out loud. So since let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Since 2015, 2016, right? In the Champions League.
Mhm.
2015, 2016 to 2017, 2018. There was a French manager that won the Champions League title. 2018 to 2019 to 2020, 2021. We had a German manager win the Champions League title. Last year, we had an Italian guy win. Does that trend continue? And if it does, that's good for Inter Milan.
Mhm.
And that's good for a bunch of other teams next year that are looking to win the Champions League, probably for the first time in a very, very, very long time
Mhm.
as well. So just something to kind of look out for the future of Champions League football for next season and in a couple weeks when the final plays out as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Final thoughts for the night. Any closing statements that we want to make?
Let's just have an interesting week of soccer we have Europa League final, FA Cup final, the last set of games in the Serie A and La Liga, and I believe Ligue 1. So let's just end the regular season of soccer on a good note, and let's get ready to dive into this summer, baby, because it's going to be a ride.
I agree. And for my closing statement, pay attention to two big clubs to let go of massive pieces. Borussia Dortmund, PSG.
Correct.
I can say. Well, with that said, signing off from episode 25, season 2 of the Yellow Card Podcast. Your host, Diego Galvez, accompanied by, as always, co-host Chris Jones. Thank you all so much. Make sure to check out and support StudentUnionSports.com. Until then, follow us on Twitter, Podcast Card on Twitter. Make sure you're following us on TikTok and everything else. Until then, see you all later.